Hey guys, welcome back to Joe's super awesome podcast brought to you by Fox Carolina, and this is episode 2, and we are talking to Mac Arnold. What can you say? From the very, very small town of Ware Place, South Carolina, on the outskirts of Pelzer, to a worldwide tour to almost every country on the planet as a guitarist and bassist with Muddy Waters and B.B. King. This Upstate legend took the time to tell his entire and very incredible life story with us, including his time as an icon in Chicago, as a musician and producer on Soul Train, as a friend to someone named Michael Jackson, and that's not all. He's talking about his current band, Plateful of Blues, and what's happening this September, something he will beam about anytime you see him at his blues restaurant in West Greenville, and that is his upcoming induction to the Blues Hall of Fame. Here he is, Mac Arnold. So, Dr. Mac, I mean, most people who start playing the guitar play, their parents maybe buy them a guitar, or they go buy themselves a guitar.
Right.
But your brother Leroy, he had a different idea, didn't he?
Yes, he sure did.
Yeah.
He bothered my father the whole summer of 1946. And my father kept telling him, boy, I don't have any money for a guitar. I barely have money enough to buy you some shoes.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
So what did he do?
Well, after my father did the farm for the summer of '46, he decided that to make ends meet, he would go to Florida and pick oranges during the orange picking season.
Yeah.
Well, he went to Florida and picking oranges, and my brother was just determined that he was going to have a guitar. So he took one of my father's gasoline cans and cut holes in it. Took some old wood from the barn and made him a neck for it. And took some nails and some kind of way bent the nails and had them set up to where he could tune the strings up that he took from the wires on the screen doors of the house.
Yeah.
And he took those to school and for show and tell, actually. The teacher at the Chapman Grove School at that time wanted kids to bring in something that they have created for show and tell. So
yeah.
He took the guitar in for show and tell and won first place. Well, I was just basically a toddler at that time, and man, I was so happy I didn't know what to do. So every time my brother would leave the house, I'd take his guitar and pick around on his guitar. So that's how I learned how to play guitars on a gasoline can.
What did your dad say when he came home and he sees his guitar?
Well, he didn't see the guitar.
Oh.
He didn't see the guitar for years because he was upset about his gasoline can. You know, back in those days, every little piece of equipment you had for the farm, it was important. So he never could find his gas can. He looked and looked and looked for that thing. He asked everybody, "You seen my gas can?" No one has seen his gas can. We wouldn't tell on each other. There was 13 of us siblings in the family, and my father always told us, "Look, I don't want nobody telling on the others, and if I ask you something, I want you to tell me what I ask you." But we neglected to tell him the truth about the can. So
That's unbelievable. Did you feel bad that eventually, or it kind of paid off?
Well, the years passed by. We made it. We made it a subject. My dad was looking for the can, and everyone knew where it was, and it wouldn't tell. Uh-huh. So we would laugh about it and have fun about it. He got okay about it after a while, but he was really upset about that can from the very beginning.
Oh my gosh. Oh, and it sounded great, right?
Thank you. Thank you.
And you make these guitars to this day.
Yes, I make them till this day. I have a nonprofit called the I Can Do Anything Foundation. And the foundation is for preservation of music and arts in public schools. So I build these cans and we auction them off to benefit the schools here in South Carolina.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And so when you got this guitar that your brother made, And I've practiced playing guitar. I really put in a good effort for months, every day, for months, and it just wasn't going to stick. And so when did you realize that you're really good at this? This is something that you can really expound upon.
Well, I picked around with that can for a while, and I decided that I wanted to do more. Mm-hmm. So I fiddled around with the piano for a while, played little drums for a while, and then I played bass. And I really fell in love with the bass because of the tones and the rhythm that you can play on the bass.
Yeah.
So I started playing bass about 1959. And there was a group here in Greenville that used to have a R&B band. It was called J. Floyd and the Shamrocks, which he was a friend of James Brown. And him and James Brown basically grew up together down in Macon, Georgia, and several little towns around there, you know, they was like kids that was sort of what we call nowadays kids out of control. They lived with the grandparents for a while, they lived with the cousins for a while, and but they ended up here in Greenville, South Carolina. J. Floyd did. There was a juke joint down on Spring Street. And right now, Spring Street it has the parking lot right where the juke joint was. It was called the Bluebird Cafe. In fact, there was several little things that happened in that block between Washington Street and McBee Avenue. There was the pool hall there. There was a liquor store. There was Bluebird Cafe. There was a club upstairs. I'm not sure what the name was right now, but there was a club upstairs as well. There was another juke joint above the Bluebird Cafe. So it was just exciting, the little block right there. So every weekend we would play all over South Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee, and up in North Carolina as well. And James Brown would come to Greenville on the Greyhound bus. You know, the Greyhound bus at that time, the station was on McBee Avenue.
Right.
So James would ride the bus and get off the bus there and just walk around the corner. He's at the juke joint called the Bluebird Cafe on Main Street. On Spring Street.
What was he like in those days?
James never changed. He was wide open from the beginning. He was wide open till the day he passed away. Yeah. James was here in Greenville a few months before he passed away. Then they went to Europe and did a tour in Europe. He got sick on the way back from Europe, and unfortunately, James passed away in Atlanta, Georgia.
Right.
Yeah.
So at that time, you're starting a band.
Well, at that time, the band was getting together all the time from different places around the country. But J. Floyd and the Shamrocks, they faded out real early. They faded out in the late '60s. So we just kept going, and back up a little bit. And the 50s is when James was hanging out with us and playing about every weekend until 1956. James did Please, Please, Please. I didn't see James anymore for almost 40 years, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, James got out there and got going, and he was wide open for the rest of the time.
Oh, my gosh. And, I mean, Greenville was a much different place back then, and not too long ago. I mean, when I first said I was going to move here, my dad was here in the 80s.
Yes.
And I said I was moving to Greenville, and he's like, why do you want to move to Greenville? There's nothing going on. But now there's a lot going on.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Greenville is on fire.
Right.
It's amazing how much has happened here over the past 10 years, I would say.
Yeah.
And it accelerated, and for over the past 4 years, it has really been on fire.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
It has. And when you were talking about those juke joints back in the day, I mean, that's a much different tale than what's going on there now, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, we used to play in beer joints around Greenville, here, everywhere. It was places on several corners around Greenville.
Oh my gosh! And then, so you're from Ware Place?
Yes,
right?
I'm from the Ware Place.
Is it near Ware Shoals?
Well, it's closer to Pelzer.
Okay.
In fact, I live in the Pelzer route.
All right. So you went from Pelzer to Greenville, then to Chicago.
That is correct.
Wow.
That is correct.
That's a jump.
Yeah, I'm telling you now. And the reason I went to Chicago, it was because of a radio station in Nashville, Tennessee. It was called WLAC, a radio station. And at that time, believe it or not, they was pushing out 150,000 watts at that time. And that's the reason we could get it all the way to Greenville. We could start listening to WLAC sometime around 11 o'clock in the evening, and we could listen to it until like 2:30 in the following morning. Wow. And then the station would start fading away. And we always had a joke about this situation. The voice would be, and then all of a sudden it keeps fading away, and then another station would start getting clearer, and this would just be a switch over. And we said, that's how rap started.
That's the beginning of rap.
That's
my gosh.
Of rap.
Right there. Who knew? History was made. Oh my gosh. And so how often did you listen to that station?
Every chance we got, because we lived in the country and there wasn't too much going on. Well, actually, the radio stations here was shut down at 6 o'clock. And the television station that we had, a couple of television, well, it was two different television stations here that we could get clearly. And they would shut down at like 11:30 at night.
Wow.
Yeah, I can remember seeing the old board with the circle on it, that test board.
Yeah.
I can remember seeing that on the old black and white TV. And at the end of it, we would have jet planes come through. Then it would go dark. It would go to the test panel.
Oh my! Yes. Oh my!
Yeah,
gosh.
the stations didn't stay open 24 hours a day back then like they do. Like they do now.
Yeah, we have people in the newsroom 24 hours a day.
Yes,
that's amazing. And so you listened to that as much as you could, and then what made you go to Chicago? How did that happen?
Well, I really fell in love with I was playing rock, R&B, and a little bit of country here and there. And then I found out that all these people that I've been listening to, that's entertainers that were doing blues, they were either in Memphis, they were in St. Louis, they were in Chicago, they were over in Detroit, Michigan. So I decided, hey, I want to go to the Midwest instead of going to the East any further than we are here in Greenville. So I decided to go to Chicago, and I met all the people that were in Chicago at that particular time. My first time going to Chicago was 1963. And I played around Chicago with a bunch of people there, and I got homesick. So I decided I'd catch the Greyhound bus and I'd come on back to Greenville. Yeah. Well, once I got to Greenville, things had started changing here so far as shutting down the juke joints and first run places that we could do some entertainment. And I said, man, I got to go back to Chicago, because every place in Chicago, every street basically that had anything going on, that was a juke joint around all over Chicago. We used to, and when I went to Chicago, there was music going on from Wednesdays all the way around to the following Monday. But the following Monday was on the higher day. It was Blue Monday, we called it back then. Yeah. And everyone in Chicago that was playing music bar hopped. so to speak, juke joint hops. Every Monday, we would take our instruments, throw them in the back seat of the car. We would take off to these different juke joints around Chicago, south, the west side, and the north side of Chicago. Wow. It was wide open, and the only way we got to see each other as musician partners was to bar hop on Mondays to these different places. We would take our instruments and hop on the stage and play a song or two, throw the instrument back in the case, and take off to the next one. So that's what we did from 9 o'clock at night on Monday until 3:30 in the morning.
Oh, my word.
Every Monday.
What's your family back home thinking about what you're doing there in Chicago? Like, they must be blown away.
They were afraid of me being out there at such an early age, because I started playing music at a very early age, at 10 years old. And by the time I was 15 years old, I was traveling around the region here to different cities, and my folk was always been tight. We never had kids out in the street, and not from our family at that age. So they were sort of terrified about me being out there. But after they realized that, hey, my father was strict on us, and I carried that in the back of my head till today. Best thing to do is to stay out of trouble, because he told us, as long as you're in my house, you're going to run by my rules. And if you leave home and get in trouble, don't call me. Don't call me. So we always kept that in the back of our heads. None of my siblings went to jail, and we always kept the rules and regulations of my father intact.
And I'm sure when you're a musician in Chicago at 2 a.m. playing at bars, there's lots of ways to get in trouble.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And one thing that I made myself follow a rule was, don't do drugs and don't drink alcohol. And that carried me a long way, because I seen so much stuff happen from people that I knew, and they were drinking alcohol and doing drugs, and they ended up in trouble.
Yeah.
And most of them ended up dead. And I can thank God to today. I'm 75 years old, and there's a handful of people out there that's 75 years old that I knew when I was growing up. It's amazing how you can shorten your lifespan by entertaining yourself in a different way.
Right. Sometimes a legal way.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, my word. And so then you teamed up with Muddy Waters.
Then I was out playing one night. Well, the first person I played with that had a name in the blues world was A.C. Reed.
Oh, wow.
A.C. Reed was a very good saxophone player and a good singer as well. Funny. He was a comedy act on the stage with his horn and the way he sung as well.
That's awesome.
So one night we were playing on the south side of Chicago, and Muddy Waters always had scouts out looking for better musicians that he already had. So they saw me playing and heard me with A.C. Reed, and one of the scouts came up at break time and said, "Hey, Mike, where are you from, man?" I said, "I'm from the South. I'm from Greenville, South Carolina." He said, "Well, I'm one of the scouts from Muddy Waters Blues Band, and I like the way you play. So how would you feel about coming over to Muddy's house and rehearse? We rehearse every Tuesday." I said, "Okay, that sounds pretty good."
Yeah.
So he gave me the address to Muddy's house and everything. So the following Tuesday, I went over to Muddy's house, and they always rehearsed in the basement of Muddy's house on 43rd Street in Chicago. So I went there and knocked on the door. One of the guys came out and let me in. We went down in the basement. We figured out what we were going to do, and so we started rehearsing. And about a half hour later, Muddy came downstairs. "Hey there, young man." Who are you?
Yeah.
I said, I'm Mac Arnold. He said, where are you from? I said, from Greenville, South Carolina. He said, you sound pretty good, man. Said, I think you'd be able to work with us for a while. You feel like working with us? I said, yeah. That's what I came to Chicago for.
Right. So would you consider that the moment that you made it?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, I really do, because this gentleman was a gentleman of all gentlemen, and he had a large family as well. So he really knew how to deal with a crew of people, such as his band. He always kept 5, 6 people all the time, and he treated us like we were a part of his family. We always traveled together. We had food together. We stayed in the same hotels together, and he would make sure that you had what would satisfy you. So I really thought that was the top of the world.
Yeah, I mean, you must have played all over the place.
Yeah, we played. My first trip with him was back in. I guess it was probably January of '64. We went to London and did a show in London. But he didn't know me from Ace of Spades back then. I didn't know him from Ace of Spades. I got hired through a organization that hired people to play with different people around the country.
I see.
And but the second time I met, man, that was really fantastic. I thought I was on top of the world. So we played the East Coast, up and down the East Coast, from Massachusetts all the way down to Miami, Florida. We played from San Diego on the west all the way up to Canada on the west.
Oh my gosh.
It was amazing. And once I played the West Coast and went back to Chicago, I said, hey guys, I just found out that the West Coast is really where I want to live. Because when we left Chicago to go to Los Angeles, it was 5 below zero in Chicago. And it was about 4 foot of snow on the ground at that particular time.
Wow.
Well, when we went to L.A., it was 67 degrees. And
By the beach.
By the beach.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I don't think I want to stay in Chicago because the weather's terrible. We used to get snow in Chicago either the week before Thanksgiving or the week after Thanksgiving. You could count on it. Mm-hmm. And at the time that we were out in L.A., we had just had a 72 inches of snow overnight.
72.
It started snowing in 1966. It snowed from 5:30 in the afternoon until about 5 o'clock the following morning, and we had 72 inches of snow on the ground and 18-foot drifts. Nothing moved in Chicago. Wow. The birds even had overcoats on.
Overcoats and mittens.
Yeah. Everything
that's cold.
stopped. The trains stopped. The planes stopped. The Dan Ryan Freeway it looked like a parking lot of animals. It was cars and trucks all over the place. Wow. It was so much looting going on. It was unreal.
And so you did that tour on the West Coast, and you see the warm weather, you see the beaches.
Yes.
And then you look at Chicago.
Yes.
72 inches of snow.
Yes. I hung out in Chicago until December 1969. The Monday after Christmas, 1969, I got on the road and headed to Los Angeles. By Wednesday of the same week, I was riding down the Hollywood Freeway.
Awesome. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about. And California, that opened up some big opportunities for you, didn't it?
Well, the reason I went to Chicago ultimately, I had a group in Chicago, a sideman group. All these guys that played with different large entertainers in Chicago. I pulled some sidemen together, and I created a group called the Soul Invaders. Well, I met Don Cornelius through that from WVON radio station in Chicago. Well, he was doing fundraisers for the station.
Wow.
And he would have all these entertainers come in from Motown Records, from King Records, from different labels around the country, Curtown Records. And when they would come into town, my group was a backup group. So we backed up all of these people, numerous people from all over the Midwest and the North, and some Southern bands came up and did entertainment. But we were the backup band for Don Cornelius. And so Don decided he wanted to have a dance show. So he did the pilot to Soul Train in Chicago. Well, the pilot took off in Chicago. It was mega. So Don said, well, since this thing took off so good, I want to take it to the West Coast. I want to do all the production in Los Angeles. So he talked to me about it. I said, well, Don, since you're going to do that, if I move to Los Angeles, you think that I have a part in Soul Train? He said, yeah, I don't see no reason why not, because you've been doing production with me here for different groups and first one stuff and another for a few years now. So if you move out there, just contact me and let me know where you are. And when I get the show set up and come on out, I'll call you up and we'll start all over again.
That's awesome.
Well, I moved out in '69, so 1970, January of '70, he called me up and said, hey, I think I got everything laid out, and we're going to be bringing the show out there in a year or so. I said, well, that's a great thing. So I didn't know too much about production for television and stuff like that. So I went to college. I started college and learned the fundamentals of television. So about a year later, Don called me up and said, well, hey, I've been a little bit delayed, so the show is not going to come to Los Angeles for recording until 1972. Well, 1972, it came to Los Angeles, and we started doing the show at one of ABC television networks. No, I'm sorry, CBS network. We started doing the show at one of their stages on Vine Street. Well, we grew out of it. It wasn't large enough for the dance group and for all the entertainers and everything.
Wow.
So we decided to move. We moved to Metro Media Square in Hollywood, and we started doing it from Channel 11 television station in Hollywood. So every other weekend we would go and we would record 2 shows every other weekend.
2 shows?
2 shows.
Okay.
And after the show, we would take off and we would go out to Michael Jackson's house in Encino, because him and Michael Jackson were really close. And so we would go there and wind down and get into Michael Jackson's those fun room that they had. They had an arcade out there in the house. They had set up in the backyard, big room, had everything in there. We used to go out there and have a ball at Michael's house every other weekend.
Oh my gosh. I saw a documentary about Michael Jackson when he was making Off the Wall. And
Yes.
they interviewed him when he used to go to nightclubs in Hollywood and everything.
Yes.
He seemed like a pretty normal guy when he wasn't on stage, when he wasn't doing interviews with people.
That is correct.
Huh.
That
Oh,
is
yeah.
correct.
What was he like? Because I know who he is on stage isn't exactly who he is in person.
Well, he was a little bit standoffish. He had this quiet time that he stayed mostly by himself. He was like he turned himself off and on. It's sort of like I am at an old age. I feel old at times, but any time that I get on that stage, it changes my life. I don't really realize how I feel on the stage because it's like it's an antidote of some kind. I get high when I get on the stage. It's just amazing.
That is awesome.
So that was basically the way Michael were. But anyway, we did a lot of stuff together with Quincy Jones. As you mentioned, the Off the Wall album. I was working part-time with Quincy Jones at that particular time. And Quincy, he was the type guy that no one could figure out. No one has ever figured out how he came up with all these ideas and how he got them out. Sometimes you can have ideas in your head, but you can't produce it.
Yep.
He always produced to what he had in his head. It was amazing. It turned us around sometimes trying to get the things out there that he wanted, that he foreseen.
Yeah.
Wow,
he must have been an incredible person to be around and talk to.
He was, and back in the day, Quincy was a trumpet player. And Quincy, he got sick at one point in San Francisco. And when they took x-rays of him, he had brain tumor. So he was operated on, and they got rid of the brain tumor, but he was told, don't ever pick up his horn again because there was too much pressure on in his head.
Really?
So he never played trumpet again. Wow. So he decided to start producing. And that was a wonderful thing because he's one of the best producers in the music business today.
Ever?
Yes, that's right.
Oh, my goodness. And so you're working on Soul Train, and I got to mention this because this is fantastic. That's how you met your lovely wife.
That is
Vonda.
correct.
Yes.
That is correct. She came to visit us. We had suspects and everything that came in and visited the show. So she was one of the audience, and I saw her and we started talking, and things just clicked. And I found out she's from Greer, South Carolina, and I'm from Greenville, so that made it even better.
And here you are in Los Angeles.
Yeah, we are in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So we started dating, and a few years later, we were married, and we've been married for 43 years now.
43 years.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
So when did you decide, or when did you think of it's time to get off the road?
Well, when I got into television, it made it a little bit easier for me to play music because it was less travel involved. Right. So it was like around 82, 83 is when I decided that I was going to retire from music. And I came home, started, I thought I was going to retire, but I came home and it was so dull being a retiree. It's just a wonderful name.
Yep.
So I didn't have enough things to do. And I hate the word bored because when a person say they're bored, you know what they need to do? Get off your butt and go and do something, because that's what brings on boredom, is nothing to do.
Right.
So I decided that, hey, I'm going to start working part-time, and I started working through part-time agencies. And then I ended up working part-time for Belk store here in all over the region and all over the country now. So they liked the way I worked, and they decided to hire me permanently. Well, they hired me permanent for building superintendent at Haywood Mall. So the chance came about that they were going to open up a distribution center in Malden. Well, they opened up the distribution center in Malden, and they needed a driver, a truck driver. So I said, well, I'm going to put in the application for a truck driver and see if they'll hire me at the distribution center. So,
did you put on your resume? work with Muddy Waters, travel the countryside.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, I would.
I had to do that because that's all the resume I had. It was from television,
Right.
So then I put in that I'm a part-time musician as well. So I had a little bit reluctant for a while. And then they finally came to me and said, well, you can drive, but we want you to work in the distribution. You can drive, but when you come back in, you need to work the rest of the day in the distribution center because it's not a full day driving.
Right.
Well, I took them on with it. Mm-hmm. Then I started driving, and for about 9.5 years, I drove and worked for Belt Simpson.
Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Then, during the duration of those 9 years or so, I met Max Hightower. Belk leased their trucks from UPS Truck Lease. UPS Truck Lease was in business at that particular time, and they rented the truck from them, and Max was working for UPS Truck Lease. Well, I had to go to the truck lease to fuel up every time I needed fuel and maintenance on the truck. One day I went to UPS Truck Lease and rolled up to the fuel line and had my stereo playing, and I was playing some blues. And the guy that was on the fuel line heard my stereo, and he said, "Hey, man," I said, "Man, there's a guy inside. He loves the blues, man." He said, he blows this old harmonica. He called it a mouth harp. He blows this mouth harp. And Max hated that word. And he told me Max hated it. So he said, would you want to go in to meet him, man? He'd love to meet you. I said, well, I don't have time today. Next time I come back to get fuel, maybe we can go inside and I'll meet him.
Yeah.
He said, okay. Well, a few days later, I had to come back to get fuel. And I said, hey, that guy you was telling me about that liked blues, is he here today? He said, yeah, he's in there working on the truck. I said, okay, let's go in there and meet him. We went inside the door, and all I could hear was this song from Muddy Waters. So I started singing a song.
Yeah.
And I went back to the back of the shop. And
what song was it?
I think it was a Rolling Stone. I'm a Rolling Stone. Mm-hmm. And Max was under this truck, and he was laying down on a creeper. And so, and when he heard us coming and singing, he rolled himself out from under that truck and sat up on the creeper. And he was sitting down there arranging his hands. And, hey, man. He said, so the guy on the line, he introduced me to Max. And Max said, I heard you singing that song, man. You know who that was? I said, yeah, I used to play bass for him. He said, oh, man. He got up off his creeper and he started walking and said, man, when did you play with him? I said, back in the 60s. He said, oh, man. He said, I've been trying to put a group together playing the blues. And would you be interested in playing? I said, I don't think so. Man,
been there, done that.
Said, man, yeah, I said, I've been there and done that. You won't believe the way the musicians are, man. Musicians just, they don't want to play, they don't want to rehearse. And when they come to the gig, they don't forgot what we rehearsed. And it's been turmoil over the years for me. So I decided, if I'm going to play music, I'll just find somebody that's having a jam somewhere. I'll just take my instrument and go and play and go home and hang out.
That seems a lot easier.
That Max got into some research. He found a book that I was in that Muddy Water created, and he found out that I had played at the Cafe A Go-Go in New York with Muddy Waters and recorded. He found out that I recorded with Otis Spann, with John Lee Hooker, T-Bone Walker, Big Mama Thornton, all those folk I had recorded with, and he just wouldn't let go. Max called me up and asked me to play, and I would turn him down for 10 years.
10 years?
10 years Max called me up. So my motto with Max, if you're in trouble and he's on the FBI, you may as well just go turn yourself in because he's not going to let go.
He's a blues pit bull.
Yes, he's a blues pit bull.
Wow. So did you think he didn't believe you at first when you talked about?
No, he didn't have. He didn't believe me one way or the other. When I first told him that I used to play with Muddy Waters, because you could see the look on his face and, oh man, you're full of it. But he never said it, but you could tell from the way he looked and the way he replied.
Yeah.
But anyway, we started running around here looking for musicians to create a group, and after I said yes, he called me up one day, and I guess he caught me on the right day, and I said yes, I'll consider playing. Then we started looking for musicians, and it took us about 4 years to find musicians that we would go out and play with them, and we were in all over this region, and a lot of guys were really good, but their attitudes wasn't suitable for what we were looking for. Right. And we got some guys together eventually, and we started rehearsing at my house, and we decided that it would be better to rent someplace here in Greenville so they wouldn't have to come all the way out in the country to my house to rehearse. Right. So I decided that we would rent a self-storage building. And we rented this building and was rehearsing in there one weekend, and we finished rehearsing. We came outside, and I heard this guitar blazing down the way in another area of the rental place for storage.
Yeah.
I said, Max, do you know who that guy is that's playing down there? He said, yeah, I know him. I said, man, that's the guy that we need for playing blues. That's a real guitar blues player right there. So he said, well, I'll talk to him and see what he say because he's got his own group. I said, who is the guy? He said, Max Hightower. I said, no, I'm sorry. He said, Austin Brazier. I said, Austin Brazier? I said, where is he from? He lived here in Greenville, but sometimes he opened up for different big groups around the country, and that's why he's got his own group. I said, man, you got to talk to this guy and see if you can get him down the house and rehearse with us. Yeah. And if he comes down the house, rehearse with him, I'll cook and everything. We'll spend the whole afternoon. And we started rehearsing at my house. The first time down, well, Austin played guitar so well until the guitar player I had, he just left. At the end of the rehearsal that day, he never showed up again. I don't know where he is until today. I don't know why he left or what the situation was, but he was a good guitar player too.
What was his name?
I can't say it. But he left. Then I found out later, his best player was a banjo player. I said, oh man, he should have told me that because I'd love to have a doggone banjo player in the group.
Yeah. Because
banjo was one of the main instruments that started the blues in Africa. Yeah.
Interesting.
Banjos, yeah. Wow. So that creeped on into the United States and became an instrument for basic bluegrass and country music and stuff like that here in the U.S. Yeah. But anyway, we were rehearsing at the house every weekend, and I would cook every weekend. We gave up the self-storage place, and we started back rehearsing at the house. Well, I was cooking every Sunday, and we would rehearse all day basically. After a while, we had so many people at the house until we had to finally realize that, hey, we're going to have to start going out and playing because we can't rehearse at the house every weekend. Just too many people at the house.
Yeah.
So our first gig, we played at the Grapevine over there on Wade Hampton Boulevard.
Right.
And this has been 16 years ago now. But Austin came and he stuck with us, and we created the group. And since we were at the house cooking and eating every weekend, we had to decide on a name for the group. Well, we shook a few names around and said, well, since we're at the house here every weekend cooking and eating, we should name this thing A Plate Full of Blues. Yes. So we named the group Mac Arnold and Plate Full of Blues. Oh. So that's how we ended up with the group.
That is so cool. And I remember seeing you my first weekend in Greenville. My wife and I just moved here. We knew nothing about the city.
Yes.
And at that time, that Greenville thing wasn't a thing yet. And so if you went online to look up Greenville, there's very little to see on the internet. Right. And so we moved here 8 years ago, and we came to downtown Greenville. We were living right off of Pelham Road. And so we went to downtown Greenville just to see what it was like, see if there was anything to do. And it was Fall for Greenville weekend. We didn't know that.
Yes.
And so we're walking down Main Street, eating some great food, and we're getting towards Falls Park. We didn't know that at the time. And we just see this crowd going crazy. Like they were jumping up and down. They were having the time of their lives. And we're like, who is this? What are they going crazy about? And there was as you know, a stage right next to Falls Park.
Yes.
To get to the entrance of it. And there you are, on stage, just slaying the crowd. It was incredible. Incredible. How does it make you feel to go on stage and just see everyone be happy and listen to each other?
It changed my life every time I go on stage.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's an energy that you can't explain. It's just fabulous.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful world.
I can't imagine. And now you're going to do something that I know you're super proud about, be inducted into the Blues Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Is that in September?
Yes, I feel so honored for that. In September 23rd, we'll be going to Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Cool.
And I'm just ecstatic about this because the past, from getting recognized that way, musicians in the past, many of them has been dead and gone on before they're recognized in that way. It's just a wonderful thing to be alive and be able to witness your own progress and what you really love doing.
Yeah,
it's just so wonderful.
That is so cool. Oh my goodness! And I want to thank you too for inviting my whole family to your 75th birthday party.
Oh man,
your friends and family are a blast. That was incredible, and it was here at the restaurant, and that was a night we will never forget. That was awesome.
It's one I'll never forget as well. I tell you the truth.
Yeah.
It was people I haven't seen in years and years, and it was like about 28 musicians here. And as you know, they played from, well, you came in a little later, but they played from 7:30 to 1:30 nonstop.
Yeah, you were playing too. I saw you on stage.
I'd hop on the stage. Now and then, I'd get the spirit. I'd have to get I had to get on the stage, man. I tell you the truth. I grabbed either my bass and get on the stage. I grabbed the guitar and get on the stage, depending on what they were playing. It was great. One time they had a horn section on the stage. All these horns was on the stage. And I said, I've got to get up there and play something with these horns on the stage. Because I've always loved a group with horns. In fact, back to the Soul Invaders in Chicago, I had to have horns to back up all these different musicians that Don Cornelius was bringing into Chicago. Right. And so I had a trumpet, a trombone, and an alto sax. In fact, the alto sax player lives here in Simpsonville now, Charles Twilley. He's an outstanding horn player, and I really loved those days that we had the horns playing.
That's awesome.
So when those horns hit the stage up there, I had to get up there and do something.
That is incredible. Oh, it was such a good time.
Yes.
So my last question, I hope the answer is no. It doesn't sound like you should, but do you have any regrets in your career at all?
I have no regrets. I would love to live the life over again because everything worked out so beautifully. I had the opportunity to play with some of the greatest musicians in the world, and I've got to travel the world because of playing music. It's just so wonderful. But on the sad side, I miss all these people that were so great and I had so much fun with. There was numerous people, and the last one that passed away that I really loved playing with over the years was B.B. King. He passed away last year when we were down in Key Largo playing, and it was tough for me to get through that particular day.
Right.
Yes.
You play with some amazing people.
Yes.
You're amazing yourself. And I got to mention, I got to put it on the record, the reason why I even decided to do a podcast was the morning we did a live shot with you to promote your birthday. That
Yes.
didn't need any promotion because the place was jammed.
Yes.
But talking to you off camera about your life and your career, I'm like, I got to start a podcast because there's incredible people out there like yourself who are doing and have done the most amazing things you can ever imagine.
Yes.
So thank you for doing this podcast as well.
Thank you for being interested.
Awesome.
I just love talking about my life, and my next venture will be a book.
A book?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, I have the I Can Do Anything Foundation. It's for the preservation of music and arts in public schools. And I also have the Dr. Mac Arnold Scholarship Fund. And I received my scholarship for music from the University of South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina.
Awesome.
And we also have different school ventures that we're going to do. When school open up this fall, we're going to start back doing blues in the schools for the season. I also going to start doing the fundamentals of music and the history of different blues musicians in colleges around the U.S.
Because blues needs to carry on.
Yes.
It needs to keep on going.
Yes, because it was the very first music ever. So we can't let it fade out. We have to keep it alive.
Dr. Mac, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Cool.
I appreciate
Fantastic.
you so very much.
Thank you to Mac Arnold for spending about an hour with us talking about his career. His induction into the Blues Hall of Fame is in Tuscaloosa on September 23rd. And be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you get a push notification whenever we send out a brand new one. How cool is that? Take care.